Captain's log, stardate, November 2019. I find myself negotiating a battle between two incredibly beautiful looking creatures with two equally determined wills. Your band of SJWs are ruining Star Trek. You white fragility maniacs are ruining Star Trek. Okay, that's enough. What's the matter with you two? Give up your hate. You both must end up dead if you don't stop hating. You're an idealistic dreamer, neckbeard Nazi. Can we stop calling each other Nazis? I've literally been to a Nazi planet, and neither of you two look like them. Not every Nazi looks like a Nazi. I mean, he hates Discovery because he hates diversity. I never said that, you snowflake. You're ruining Star Trek with your over-the-top progressivism and agenda pushing and twisting the mind to... I assure you, my mind will not be twisted. Not by either of you. It is obvious to the most simple-minded that they are inferior, and they don't even understand Star Trek. The most obvious evidence is that you two are of the same breed. Are you blind, Captain? Look at me. You're both Trekkies. Yes, but he likes Discovery. He hates Discovery. All of his people hate Discovery. And Alex Kurtzman. And J.J. Abrams. We do not speak his name. I thought those movies were fun. You only like the pew-pew laser fights that were so abundant in the Kelvin movies. Don't gatekeep. I'll gatekeep your stupid, ugly face. Gentlemen! Excuse me, I don't identify as a gentleman. Oh God, with this. Hey, we can respect gender identity. Gentle people. I don't identify as a person, actually. What? I'm more of a symbolic representation, so... Yeah, me too. Men, women, invited transgendered species, and walking metaphors. Let's just calm down and actually talk about this like, men. Why does it have to be men, huh? Giving into the patriarchal Alright, we're in the briefing room. And we're just going to talk this out. Wait, can we take off these turtlenecks first? Yeah, it's kind of hot in these. Sure, take them off. I think people get the whole metaphor by now. Oh, come on. What? Okay, change that. What? Change. You know this is a violation of my free speech, right? No, you're welcome to wear the shirt, just not in my video. Video? I mean ship, not video, ship. No fourth wall breaking here. Alright, let's start off with the nitty-gritty. Why do you two hate each other so much? You first. Wait, do we have to do it in this room? What's wrong with the room? It's the Discovery set. Can't we do the original series? Oh, come on. This set was awesome. I don't like it. This set is an amazing, loving recreation of the original. You know what's also good? The original. Can we, is it okay if we move? Fine. Much better. Made of cheap cardboard. What was that? Nothing. I'll have you know these sets are perfect. Okay, so this is actually a good place to start. He hates Discovery because it looks different from the original. I don't hate that it looks different. I hate it because it ruins canon. Who cares about canon? I do. Well, okay, fair. I mean, so do I. But we have to move on. We can't just be stuck in the look of the 60s. But there's stuff in there that doesn't make sense. They have completely different looking ships. They have holodecks and holograms, for heaven's sakes. And this is established in canon to not appear for 100 years. And if they want to make the 23rd century using technology that we have today, not the 1960s, that makes sense to me. But if they wanted to do something that looks different, why didn't they just set it after Star Trek Voyager or Nemesis? Because they wanted to flesh out that time in Trek canon. Oh, come on. The first season just reeks of placing it there in the timeline because it's the most familiar to more casual Trek fans. You have a character who is inexplicably related to Spock for some reason. They run into the Enterprise. They have Sarek. They have the Starfleet Delta. All these things are just there for people to go, oh, hey, that's Star Trek. I know that. It just feels like they did it so that people can go, oh, it's near Kirk. That's Star Trek. I get it. Okay, you're probably right. The first season does seem like it's shoehorning itself into that point in the timeline just to get Trek credentials, which backfired anyways. So I get that argument. But the prequel setting actually worked in season 2, where it justified Burnham being related to Spock and fleshed out the prequel characters like Captain Pike. I do like a good captain. Oh yeah, I mean, I liked Pike too, and Ethan Peck's Spock wasn't all that bad, I guess. See, and just because it was set at that time in Trek doesn't make it overall bad. It looks like they're gonna fix the canon problem by going 1,000 years in the future in season 3 anyways. Yeah, but the series just felt dark and wrong. Yeah, the first season was dark, but I thought it was a really great meditation on how we hold on to optimism for the future, even in the darkest of times. And it did that by completely destroying the optimism of Star Trek. I think it actually showed why we need Trek now the most. I mean, Trek should be a reflection of today's world, and today's world doesn't look so bright. So maybe it's good for Trek to show us the path from bleakness to optimism. Plus, season 2 was much more brighter in tone anyways. Oh, so they jump 1,000 years into the future. Oh, so they change the tone. It seems like they're just backing up on everything that they've tried to do. Yeah, but that's what writing is. Writing is seeing what works and learning and growing, as with any job. Okay, hold on a second. I got a ton more to talk about. I could go on and on about how great the characters are, or how much the plot doesn't make sense. All this stuff just feels like a matter of opinion. I mean, you don't like that Discovery ruins canon, and that's okay. Just as it's okay that you don't care and it doesn't matter to you, or you think it doesn't ruin canon. Same goes with the plot and the character stuff. Yeah? And I mean, isn't art inherently subjective? I mean, like it or hate it, does it really matter in the grand scheme of things? I mean, if you hate Mystic Knights of Tir na Nog, and I love Mystic Knights of Tir na Nog, we should be able to get along, right? Sure, yeah, that makes sense. Do you like Mystic Knights of Tir na Nog? So if all of that makes sense, why do you two hate each other so much? Because the SJWs are ruining the franchise that I loved. Yeah, well, I'm a proud SJW, and I've loved this franchise since the day I first saw it. But I bet you couldn't even name the registry number of the USS Defiant from the episode The Tholian Web. Why would I know that? I'm just saying that a true fan would know that it was NCC-1764. You're an alt-right crazy person who doesn't get what Star Trek was about in the first place. Whoa. What does any of this have to do with each other? Everything. Okay. Wow. Discovery is just trying to shove its message down my throat. It needs more subtlety. Yeah, because blatant political messages in Star Trek are bad. It's not as if the original series made a ridiculously obvious and heavy-handed metaphor for racism and ran it into the ground over the course of a whole episode. True Star Trek fans only love the deep, moral, rational, thought-provoking episodes of pre-Abrams Star Trek. Gatekeeping again, not everyone has to adhere to your vision of a Star Trek fan, only if they really understand the true Trek canon. Yeah, the perfect Trek canon with such great episodes as Spock's Brain, or Move Along Home, or Threshold, or those are still fun. Code of Honor. That one was kind of racist. Yeah, racist. Kinda like you. Will you stop calling me that? You hate Discovery because the lead is a woman of color. I never said that. Yeah, well, this video that hates Discovery I watched said it's because she's black, and you must agree with that, because they also hate Discovery. I hate Discovery, but I would never say something like that. Liar. I'll show you who's a liar. Okay, stop. I'm starting to see a pattern emerging here. You are? Yes, clearly there's some obvious tribalism going on. You can say that again. But it's more than that. To answer this, we're going to need more context. So if you're a fan of really, well, anything out there on the internet, you're going to have heard of something called toxic fandoms. Others have done longer and more in-depth discussions on toxic fandoms and what goes into them being created than I have time to do here. So I'm just going to do a brief overview here and link to a couple videos in the description. Toxic fandoms are basically when fandoms of a certain movie, franchise, or series begin to have a sense of entitlement to said series. And when they see it changing from what they like, they tend to react by trolling online or being harassive or abusive. This is not to say that everyone who dislikes the direction of their franchise is toxic. Oftentimes, but not exclusively, we see toxic fandoms created as a backlash against what many see as forced progressivism in the things that they love. To use another fandom, for example, there was a huge backlash against Star Wars casting a woman and a man of color as the leads of the franchise. People were saying that Disney was trying to create a feminist or progressive agenda for the movie. The toxic fandom around Star Wars even got so bad that Star Wars actress and woman of color Kelly Marie Tran had to leave the internet after receiving trolling and abuse for her being a woman of color in the franchise. And that just isn't speculation, there are people that expressly stated that that was their goal. And it's not just Star Wars. We saw this when Doctor Who cast a woman to play the Doctor, the MCU with Captain Marvel, the comics industry in general dealt with it when they started having more diverse characters in both Marvel and DC Comics in what was known as the Comicsgate movement. And now, Star Trek has it. Wait, no, I don't think that's it at all. What do you mean? Well, first off, I don't think these fandoms are toxic. I don't hate diversity or things like that. I just hate how the show tries to be so obvious about its agenda. I think it's ruining the subtlety of the show when the message gets so blatant. The original series wasn't so egregious. Like Devil in the Dark, where they used a Horda to talk about treating an other with understanding and kindness, even if they don't look like you. It wasn't in your face. Okay, I can get behind that. I mean, I do find it kind of egregious sometimes, like that one time Emperor Georgiou basically says, "Women power" at the screen at one point.
Your counselors must reorganize their tiny male brains to rationalize why it isn't them standing on the dais.
God, that made me cringe. Yeah, but I don't think that's the whole show. There's some really great subtle moments of diversity as well, like with the amazing amount of people of color on the show, or the queer characters, or the all-female away team. Plus, subtlety isn't always the best barometer of good. You can be subtle like in Devil in the Dark, but Star Trek was known for its blatant diversity, which wasn't subtle and was the distinct part of the message. Those things are fine, but then you have Captain Pike go off and be See, now we're getting into the specific minutia of the show, which we could argue all day. Certainly, Star Trek in all of its forms has had blatant episodes or more subtle episodes, and both have had varying levels of quality. But the important point is that you guys can discuss this reasonably, without resorting to calling each other names or Nazis or things like that. I guess you're right. So why are you always so angry when I try to talk about this stuff? I guess it's because I feel like what you're really saying isn't, "Oh, I don't like the blatant politics." It's more like you're saying anyone who isn't a straight white man as the protagonist isn't good. But that's not what I'm saying, and it never was what I said. And that comes from who is controlling the conversation. The biggest voices of negative criticism of a particular show or franchise are those who say the most inflammatory or toxic things. That's because the more inflammatory or sensational something you say is, typically the more clicks or views you get. So those who spread the most toxicity are the ones who are gaining the most power within the group. Let's take a look at Comicsgate. One of the leaders of that movement is Richard C. Mayer, who runs the Diversity and Comics YouTube channel. Mayer repeatedly has said sexist, misogynist, transphobic, homophobic, and racist things, and has been leading the charge for harassment and abuse online.
How is this for topical? You got a girl with pink hair, and you got a shaved side of the head black lesbian who has almost no breasts. Yep, that's a woman.
Yet, he's one of the de facto leaders controlling the conversation when it comes to the Comicsgate movement. Specifically because he gets attention for doing and saying these horrible things. His audience grows as a result, so he says more horrible things. It starts to become a feedback loop, one that keeps growing and growing and growing as time goes by. So while ostensibly the goals of Comicsgate are to lessen blatant political messaging in comics, which again is an arguable thing, you could say it's good or bad or whatever, but it's become more and more linked with views of men like Mayer who dole out hatred, bigotry, and harassment. And the two become linked. You could argue the merit of how a specific comic gets its message across, for example, but any criticism inevitably will get linked with its most toxic viewpoint. So when someone says, "I don't like this comic book for this specific reason," you are now lumped in with a man with horrific viewpoints. And then because of that, people who like the thing that you hate now equate your views with those horrific viewpoints. But that's not what I'm saying at all. But it starts to become linked with that viewpoint, even if it's not your point of view. Why can't I just criticize the show and not be called a homophobe or something like that? Because by not calling out the leaders of your own group who say and do these horrible things, you're basically tacitly endorsing them. No, I'm not. I'm just having my own opinion. Sure, maybe I'll watch a Doomcock video now and then, and maybe I agree with some of the stuff he says, but that doesn't mean I think all the other stuff is okay. So you just keep allowing these people to keep saying and doing these horrible things, and you do nothing? Haven't you ever heard of the only thing necessary for the triumph of evil was that good men should do? This is just a TV show. Get over yourself. But we shouldn't allow these alt-right views into our show. Stop bringing politics into it. You're the one bringing politics into it. I'm just trying to fight back against hate. You know what? So what if I listen to these toxic leaders? At least they're not so over-the-top insane like you. I know you think I'm a volcanic hothead, erupting lava from my nostrils at danger signals that are only figments of my imagination. But believe me that there can be no moment when I have my guard down. So what happens? I act like a madman out of anger and frustration he forces upon me, and thereby proves his point that I'm a madman. Or madwoman, or mad metaphor. Did you just quote Star Trek? No. You just like verbatim quoted Star Trek as if you just copied and pasted that line right into the script. Shh, that's being ridiculous. I've had enough of this. I'm just going to keep on listening to whoever I want, and you're just as bad as they are. I hope the show just keeps getting better. Let's kick all the straight white men out of it. See, I know that's what you wanted. I should be calling out you insane SJWs, ruining everything with your blatant agenda. Oh, perfect. Wait, why do I get a dildo? How convenient. Stop! This is exactly what I'm talking about. You see, up there. You're fighting while an alien has total control over you. It goes on and on and on. The game of war, pawn against pawn. Stop the bad guys, while somewhere something is sitting back and laughing and starts it all over again. You keep accusing each other, assuming each other's ill intent, and then pushing each other further into each other's views. You get radicalized on both sides to the point where neither of you can find common ground. We've got to start listening to each other, to stop accusing each other of the worst of each side. Because then it doesn't just become about enforcing your part of a group, but becoming the most of a group. You have to become the perfect encapsulation of your side, or else you're seen as failing. Those who hate and fight must stop themselves, otherwise it will never stop. You're powerless. We know about you and we don't want to play. Maybe there are others like you around. Maybe you've caused a lot of suffering, a lot of history. We'll be on our guard now, ready for you. So ship out. Out. We have no urging to hate SJWs, but for now, only a fool fights in a burning house. That was weird. Can we all agree that was weird? Yeah, we're really mixing our episodes and metaphors in this video, aren't we? It's important that we don't assume that people who disagree with us are suddenly at the furthest end of the spectrum of disagreeing with us. Because then it pushes them to that exact opposite opinion. Yes, we shouldn't say that because you hate a TV show that you suddenly hate people of color or something like that. We can and should have a nuanced discussion. Ha! See? Not so fast, because there's still one last piece of this discussion that often gets missed. Let's go back to that original series episode, Let This Be Your Last Battlefield. The episode pointed out the ridiculousness of seeing someone as an other based on pointless distinctions. Yet, this often gets framed and remembered that both sides were equally wrong. But that's not actually the case. Certainly the fight they were locked in was pointless, but the actions and ideologies of both sides were certainly not equal. Let's remember that Lokai was a slave hunter. Bale just wanted to live, while Lokai wanted to enslave.
Genocide for my people is the plan for your utopia.
Insane, filthy little plotter of ruin.
In discussions of issues like this, we tend to think that both sides share an equal amount of the blame. It's why movies like Green Book, which shows a white man and a black man as both equally having something to learn, and that racism is solvable by both men understanding their faults, are successful. It's an easy narrative to fall into. We as humans tend to want to see both sides of an argument as having equal weight, but that's not true. Continuing with the Green Book example, it ignores all the systemic and institutionalized racism that black men have to face that white men don't. But because it's palatable, Green Book wins Best Picture, and movies that show more nuanced portrayals of how racism works in our society get passed by. But what does this have to do with me, or Star Trek? Well, because there is a right and a wrong in this debate. So you're saying I can't hate Star Trek Discovery? You're saying I can't think it's a bad show? Not at all. I saw before that you two can have a great discussion about the merits of the show either way. If you don't like the characters or the plot or how the messages get across, that's up to you. So what the hell was with all that Green Book crap? Because sure, while it is good that you're not listening to the toxic side of fandoms, they were right when they said that you can't sit idly by. The things these people say are wrong, They spew bile and harassment, telling people of color or LGBT people that they don't belong in shows that they love simply because it would seem to be pushing an agenda. But it is an agenda. Gay people simply being in a show isn't an agenda. We exist and deserve to be in stories. But why do queer people have to be in every show? Why do they have to be in my Star Trek? Because people of color and LGBT people like Star Trek too. And LGBTQ people like myself and people of color should be allowed to be in it. And no one's trying to convert you, but Star Trek has always been about showing diversity of others. But they never were in Star Trek before. That's because not including LGBTQ people had been institutionalized by Hollywood and our culture. And as philosopher Nancy Fraser put it, when such patterns of disrespect and disesteem are institutionalized, for example in law, social welfare, medicine, public education, and/or social practices, and mores that structure everyday interactions, they impede parity of participation, just as surely as distributive inequalities. And from that, it follows that simply being able to participate in something, like queer people participating in Star Trek, itself becomes seen as an act of violence against an institution. Simply being seen becomes dangerous to the status quo. And so people push back against inclusion and diversity because it, wrongly, is seen as an attempt to throw them out of power, when really it's just trying to have equal participation. Wow, we're really getting into philosophy here. Kinda, I'm a starship captain, so I'm basically an armchair philosopher. But if you want to know more about this deeper, then click right here to see PhilosophyTube's excellent video on the subject. What are you pointing at? A link to another video, unless of course I got about as lazy as Season 3 William Shatner and forgot to put it there, which is very possible. But what does this have to do with a moral stance? I feel like we got off topic. Well, as I said before, the people who say that people of color or LGBTQ people or women being in something that are pushing an agenda or are destroying the moral fabric of our culture, they're wrong. But their side does the same. I seem to remember left-wing Star Trek YouTuber Steve Shives saying repeatedly in his videos that he doesn't want Trump supporters watching his content.
If you are a Trump supporter and you want to come and watch my videos and you just want to have fun talking about Star Trek without bringing politics into it, this is not for you. I am not going to make a space for you. I'm not going to make you comfortable. I am not going to talk about Star Trek in a way that will be palatable to you.
How is that not an act of violence against me? Well, if you watch his video, he literally says that he respects your ability to have your own opinion. He respects that you have a right to have that opinion. But he also says that he knows your views are harmful, intentional or no.
If that's really what you want to do, if you really just want to turn your brain off and shut yourself off from all the political messages of Star Trek and just watch it as a completely flat, superficial space adventure show, you can do that. And as I said earlier, like, you're still a Star Trek fan. But you're willfully ignoring a huge part of that show. And while I cannot say that you are not a real Star Trek fan if you do that, I can say I do not understand that. If you find something to like about it, that's your right. And you're still a Star Trek fan. It's not for me to say you're not, but I personally do not get it. It is not my intention to allow you to think about Star Trek and not bring politics into it. Quite the opposite, in fact.
And therefore doesn't want to give a safe space for you on his channel, which is his right to do. He's allowed to try to cultivate the audience he wants. There's a difference between respectively asking someone to not watch your stuff and what others do, saying that people of color or women or LGBTQ people shouldn't be involved in works of media at all. Indeed. And like Steve Shives, I'm going to make clear that this YouTube channel does have a particular stance that I'm going to adhere to. Well, I do want to make my channel a place of learning and welcome to anyone who wants to be open to new ideas and perspectives. And I'm not going to actively push anyone out unless they're gatekeeping, harassing, or insulting. I have to make clear that there is a moral stance that I hold to, and one that I believe is incompatible with much right-wing thought, and especially far-right and Trumpian politics. Politics which have, whether you want them to or not, very much been a part of fandom discussion nowadays. But I just want to watch my favorite sci-fi show without politics. Sorry, most sci-fi shows like Doctor Who, Star Wars, and especially Star Trek have always been political, and have mostly been progressive and left-leaning. Some may have been more blatant or done better or worse than others, but it's always kind of been there. You can't take it out. And if you don't want politics in your Star Trek, then maybe you shouldn't be watching it. You can hate the show, but this entrusts you with a duty to not support the more toxic side of fandoms, like watching their YouTube videos or supporting them on Twitter or Facebook. You shouldn't support these people simply because they agree with you on the TV show. The other things they say are more important than just disliking a TV show, and you can't just ignore that. So hate the show, but either don't support those people, or even better, actively stand against them. God, fine, I still hate Discovery, but I'll try to do better. All right, good. This got really preachy here at the end. It's almost like a big preachy ending where the captain lays down a moral or political lesson was a part of Star Trek or something. Shut up. Hey everyone, I hope you enjoyed that. I have a few postscript things to say in order to help make a few things very clear and hopefully spark the discussion that I hope this video will create. So please stick around for just a few more minutes with me as I kind of break this all down. So this was my first time doing a video like this, creating a philosophical debate using characters. And I'm rather proud of it, but I always know that it's kind of not perfect in many ways. However, I thought that this was the best way to get at the issues that I really wanted to discuss, and I'll get to what those issues are in just a moment. But first things first, I should say that all of these people in the video were just characters, and none of them fully represents my point of view. I share some of them, but not all of them, and certainly there are, probably two characters, the captain character and the character who likes Star Trek Discovery, that I tend to agree with more, but all of them are sort of straw men facsimiles of, different ideas that I've seen crop up within the fandom of Star Trek and in other fandoms as well. But none of them fully, completely represent a version of myself. Next, below in the description, I put several links for further readings or viewings for you if you're curious about this topic. However, there is one that I think is required viewing for everyone who wants to know more about what I've discussed in this video. And that video is called How to Radicalize a Normie by Innuendo Studios. I really cannot highly recommend watching this video enough. I recommend watching the whole video, but since it's a really long video, the section that most pertains to what I've been talking about starts at 7 minutes and 30 seconds and goes for about 5 minutes. Please watch it even if you only have the 5 minutes to watch that section. I really think it pertains to a lot of what I've been discussing in this video and really kind of gets at the core of why I really wanted to talk about this. So let's get back to this video. In this video earlier, I mentioned and then visually represented many specific YouTubers, most of which, but not all, were in the Trek fandom. However, I wish to make very clear, for the specific YouTubers within the Trek fandom that I mentioned, namely Nerdrotic, Doomcock, MechaRandom42, and Midnight's Edge, I have no direct issues with them as people. I want to make that very clear. I am also not calling them something as hyperbolic as racist or white supremacist or anything like that. My critique in this video was of their content. Keyword being content, not them as human beings. I have criticisms of their work and how their work creates spaces for specific members of their audience to be radicalized, which I am almost certain isn't these creators' direct intention, but is nevertheless a byproduct of their work, and it is dangerous. I deeply believe that forming a community that predominantly centers around hating something can never lead to good things. And if you go and look at these YouTubers' videos, 90% of them are all negative focused videos about critiquing or getting angry or upset about something instead of actually loving something. I'm not saying that you can't have an issue with the direction of the Star Trek franchise or any franchise in general, but the fact that every video you make is negative and then does these signalings towards certain specific members of your audience, like I said, I don't think anything good can come of that. And I want to do everything in my power with what little platform I have to try to ensure that the issues that are presented in that Go Radicalize a Normie video don't happen within the Trek fandom that I so deeply care about. They are not bad people. To say differently would be a lazy criticism and oversimplification on my part. But their content can have dangerous ramifications. And I want that to be 100% clear right here. And for the purposes of showcasing my standards, I do believe Richard C. Mayer, who I also mentioned in this video in regards to the Comicscape movement, has displayed overtly racist, transphobic, homophobic, and sexist actions. And I am more than happy to call him out on that. And I'm not doing the same for Doomcock, Mecha-Random, Neurotic, and Midnight's Edge. So that's the distinction that I'm making. So let's get into that. What was the goal of this video? Well, the goal of this video was to humorously, yet purposefully, address how in fandom, and not just exclusively in Star Trek fandom, debates eventually become incredibly polarized and radicalized on both sides. We tend to strawman each other, strawman real people that exist, assuming the worst of intentions on both sides of the debate. We assume malice or assume someone's entire belief system based on something as silly as, I hate Star Trek Discovery or I love Star Trek Discovery. And then when we do that, it causes the person that we're assuming about to then deepen into those exact views. My hope was to use this video to find a way to use comedy as a way to de-escalate this growing issue within the Trek fandom. Creators like Ket Wolski have also been doing this type of work. This is not about Ket Wolski versus Midnight Edge or Jesse Gender versus Doomcock. This is not about creating YouTube beef or dragging someone or calling someone out. Besides, I'm still a pretty small fry YouTuber at this point for me to be actively trying to create beef with somebody. And honestly, I was kind of worried about releasing this video because I don't wish this to be taken that way. But ultimately, I decided to do so because this felt like something I was called to say, even in a way that I know may end up being flawed or misinterpreted. Because this video was about trying to normalize respectful discussion within our community around Star Trek shows and other fandoms. And that respectful discussion cannot happen as long as these specific YouTubers keep cultivating their audience in the way that they do. But again, like I said numerous times, watch Innuendo Studios' videos to understand what I am talking about, as he articulates why I feel this is important in a very clear and concise way. We need to find ways to talk to each other respectfully. And it's okay to say that there are hard lines of things that you could never agree with. As I alluded to before, by attempting to de-escalate this conversation, I need to make clear that creating spaces for respectful discussion does not mean meeting in the middle. I think that it is 100% okay to hate Star Trek Discovery and to have legitimate criticisms of it. There are plenty of reasons to take issue with the quality of the show. I like it, you may not, and that's okay, and I actually love discussing that because through the discussion we can find out how to make things better or how to talk about the show or come to a consensus about the show. However, different sides of the coin have become so wrapped up in other political ideologies. And as a result, I feel a need to say that this channel is not intended to be an apolitical space. I have certain viewpoints that I think are completely incompatible with certain right-wing thought, and especially Trumpian thought. However, I wish this channel to attempt to be a place where everyone from all political ideologies can learn. As long as we engage with each other respectfully and with an openness to hearing new ideas and learning, then all are welcome. However, this is not me trying to become a centrist. I am as leftist as they come. Let's tear down the bourgeoisie, my Marxist brothers and sisters and non-binary people. But you can resist being a centrist while also resisting polarization. My goal here on this channel is to use fandoms and geekery to educate about a variety of topics in an open and fun way. And to also just simply sometimes be geeky and just have fun with our favorite franchises like Star Trek. This channel may be sometimes political, but that will not always be the case. But the reverse is always true. So all are welcome here. But not all political viewpoints are created equal, and certain actions like insulting, gatekeeping, or harassment are unacceptable on my channel. However, all views on the quality of shows like Star Trek Discovery are certainly valid and welcome to be discussed. But what is most important is that I consider all of you to be part of my community. I sadly cannot know all of you personally, just as you all don't know me personally. But I do want you to know that I welcome you here in this space regardless of who you are, as long as you are respectful of others in it. And finally, I should say that this will probably be my last video on this topic, at least for a while, or until something important or specific happens that I feel a need to address. To continue to do so would be to probably overdraw attention to the problem, and also probably work to needlessly antagonize the YouTubers that I've been talking about, who I was critiquing. This video will probably already antagonize them if they see it, but I hope that they take it in the spirit of good faith and constructive criticism in which it was intended. though I sadly suspect that they may not. However, I am planning on doing more videos like this Fox Star Trek philosophical debate style and have some planned for early next year. So I'd love to hear your criticism of the style of video, in addition to, of course, criticism of the actual argumentative content of this video. As always, I love to hear your critiques of my work, as I know as a creator I am not perfect and can only get better if people engage constructively with my work. And I know that this is a touchy subject, so I'm willing to admit if I failed or ended up hurting someone. But remember, the characters in the video are intentionally heightened to showcase a point, not intended to specifically represent any one person or YouTube channel or viewpoint. So I don't want to end this video on something so heavy, so one last little bit of fun before we go. If all of you don't want to engage in the criticism or the discussion around this video necessarily, I have a fun game for all of you if you just want to have some fun in the comments. In this video, one of the characters was called out for using an exact speech from a Star Trek episode. However, this wasn't the only direct quote from Star Trek that I used. Can you find all of the quotes that I used within this video? That's it for this video. Thank you so much for watching. And if you liked this video and want to see more, don't forget to subscribe. I make new videos every Friday with some additionally throughout the week if I'm feeling up to it or something comes up. And if you want to help make these videos even better, give to my Patreon page just like these amazing folks did. It truly helps me pay the bills and also to get better equipment and costumes and all that cool stuff for videos like this. And special thanks to my Admiral level Patreons, Stephen Schuhart, Wellington Marcus, and Lol. Thank you so much. I can't tell you how thankful I am for everything you guys have given. It really means the world to me. But regardless of if you give to my Patreon or subscribe, I hope that all of you live long and prosper.